He's actually a client now. He sold his business for millions and millions and millions and millions, enough millions where his kids and grandkids never have to work again. So he did pretty well for himself. He actually sent me a podcast and he goes, "This is the CEO of Milestone. They do HVAC, plumbing, heating, air, electrical. They're a home services company. And it's the CEO on there just spilling out industry secrets." And I call David and I go, "Holy smokes, man, this guy's making $30 million a year after he pays everybody. You know what I mean? He's making a fortune. And then he's out there just telling everybody about his secrets." And David goes, "Those secrets are safe. Everybody's too lazy to execute on them."
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Creasa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital. Funding built for builders.
Well, hey there, friend. Michael Creasa here, your host here at Builder Straight Talk. And in this week's episode, I'm interviewing a builder by the name of Cody Clark from Texas. And his company is called Clark Custom Homes. Now, so far, so good. Easy enough story. But let's talk about the backstory. The guy used to be a paramedic, a firefighter, until one day a friend of his approached him and said, "Hey, Cody, can you build me a home?" And it's like, well, okay, how do you make that jump from putting out fires, mending broken bones, to climbing up on ladders and creating homes? I don't know, but we'll unpack that in this conversation that I had with Cody. And some of the other things we'll touch on are some of the unique marketing strategies he's using to entice people to get to know, like, and trust him. And I'm talking about video, simple to do video that you can be doing using your iPhone. As a matter of fact, like I'm doing now, and like Cody does with his videos. And we're also going to talk about his journey. We'll unpack the successes and the failures along the way, and some of the things that really put him up against the wall to the point where he thought, maybe this isn't the career for me. And if you've been in construction long enough, I'm sure you can appreciate that, and you've had those moments too. And speaking of moments, I need your help here. To get through the algorithm, to get the show out there so more people can see it, I need you to please subscribe, like, and share this video. And, with a simple click of the mouse, subscribe, like, and share, and that will help take us up into the stratosphere of the algorithms so more people can see our videos. So once again, Michael Creasa here. Our guest today is Cody Clark with Clark Custom Homes. I know you're going to enjoy this episode, so lock and load. Let's get started. Well, Cody, my friend, welcome to Builder Straight Talk. I'm excited to have you on the call today. I've been chasing you for months and months, so finally, we got you here. To me, you're my great white whale, because way back when I started this podcast, you were one of the first people I stumbled across. And I don't know what it was, but I said, I want this guy in the show. And I just kept pursuing you like a dog in heat. And finally, here we are. So thanks for taking time out today, my friend.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Well, so let's rewind the clock back to the beginning. You weren't always a builder. And once upon a time, you were a paramedic, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir. A firefighter, paramedic.
So how do you make the jump from that into building?
That's a great question. So growing up, we did a lot of construction. We would buy these really rundown houses on the street, and then, we would renovate them. And my dad learned how to do it from his dad. His dad was a builder. Anyway, so growing up, we worked on these houses. And so I learned all the trades. I learned to hang sheetrock, learned to tape bed and texture, learned how to do plumbing, electrical, framing, roofing. So we learned all the things. I don't know, I guess this is about 7 or 8 years ago now. We got a piece of land. We got a piece of land from my parents. We got 15 acres here, and we're looking at hiring a builder. Couldn't really find anybody that we really loved. I mean, one guy he was great, but he was just too expensive. We couldn't afford it. Not my proudest man, but I took his like bid sheet, and I was looking at it. I was like, it looks a little high, but I can get it done a little cheaper. And I called around. I called a buddy of mine. I said, "Hey, you've built a house before, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, I built 2." So same thing, he was a fireman, same thing I did. And I said, "Do you think you could help me build my house? I mean, I'll pay you, to help me." Just like, it was like a consultation fee, essentially. And that's basically how I got started. Was I had him, well, let me back up. I had to get a signature from the bank. And that was really what I was after. It wasn't really the consultation more than it was, you can't build your own house in the state of Texas. So I had my buddy, basically falsify the documentation and say, like, "Yeah, I'm building this house. I'm building this house." And I called him, I mean, maybe 3 or 4 times throughout the builds. And I was like, "Hey, I got a question about so and so, or I need a good plumber, who have you used?" Or, whatever. But I mean, for the most part, I just pretty much just went off without a hitch,
Great.
and
There goes our great standing or rating
y
in the social media sphere. I'm interviewing a criminal. Wonderful. Wonderful,
yes,
Cody.
yes, 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 it's criminal intent for sure. The house went really well, and that was it, and I was like, "Oh, man, that was super easy." Alright, well, I mean, I'm back to my regular job, being a firefighter, paramedic, and then, somewhere along the way, somebody said, "Hey, you've got some construction experience. Would you like to become a project manager for this company called Rescue Restoration?" And I was like, "So, yeah, I could probably, make a few dollars on the side," so I was doing that for a minute. Somewhere in between, like, working for the fire department and working as a project manager, another buddy of mine calls me and says, "Hey, do you think you could build me a house?" And I said, "I don't." I said, "Man, I'm really a fireman, not a home builder." And I said, "I do like some very minor, like handyman level stuff on the side. Like it's not we're not talking about like." I said, "But yeah," I said, I guess like he had to talk me into it. And he said, "What if I pay you $40,000?" And I said, "Holy smokes!" I said, $40,000? Oh, I'll do anything for 40,000 bucks." So I built his house, and it did not go as well. Just meaning the house, the construction of the home went fine. I just didn't understand. What I didn't understand at the time was how like selections are made, and like just like the customer experience and what they were expecting. And I mean, and they gave me some grace, you know what I mean? Because I was like, "Hey, I don't know. I've just built my house, and I'm gonna kind of do with you what I did for myself. So, go to Floor and Decor and pick all your electrical and pick all your flooring and pick all your stuff." But yeah, the house went pretty good. Learned a lot about working for someone else rather than yourself. And then I was like, "Okay, cool." I was like, "That was fun." Finished that one up, and then another buddy called me and says, "Hey, you built Joel's house. Can you build me a house?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess. I mean, sure, why not? Sure, I'll build you a house." And I said, "Yeah, I mean, I got this stuff down." You know what I mean? So we had a little better process, and I ended up building a house for him. And at the time, we had made about 100,000 bucks on the side. And my CPA's like, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" And he's like, "You need to like start an LLC. You're about to get murdered on taxes." And so I started the LLC, posted a couple pictures on Facebook, and I was like, my goal was to do 2 houses a year. That's it, no more than 2. Just what, and I was gonna, do 30 years with the fire department and then retire and be the home builder that built 2 houses a year. Well, that I don't know. It just I don't say exploded overnight because it exploded over, the next 7 years.
Yeah. So
Uh,
let
I,
me just pause it there for a sec. Like using words like exploded as a paramedic, probably not a good choice. But let's go back. So you're offered 40 grand to build a
Mhm.
friend's house. What are you making as a paramedic, if I can ask?
Yeah. So at the time, I'm probably making like 60,000 bucks a year.
Wow. So you're almost making the same with less risk. I gotta imagine that the stress that you're under as a paramedic must be just off the charts.
Yeah, yeah. So, we're working every third day, depending on the schedule at the time. So I work for the fire department. So like we're, like one day you're on the engine, another day you're on the ambulance, you know what I mean? But yes, I mean you're flip flopping a lot, just so you're back and forth. But I think what really pushed me over the edge, not to get too ahead of you, but is just the toll it was taking on my body, more or less. My back hurt, my knee hurt, wearing 100 pounds of gear, going up 5 flights of stairs to work a high rise fire or something, for example, or pulling a 500-pound patient through a tiny hallway, or just there's just very taxing on your physical being
Yeah,
and
it's
mental.
not an easy hole, and, I wanna say PSD, um, PTSD. Yeah, you guys are renowned for that as well. I don't know how you're able to separate work from home life. I think you made the better choice. What do you think?
When I was getting ready to leave, so I left about 2 years ago. When I was getting ready to leave, like, I'd prayed about it, and I was like, I felt like it was the right thing to do, but I was like, Are you sure? Like, are you sure you're sure? Because I'm not sure." You know what I mean? But I felt like it was the right thing to do, and I felt like that was the direction I was supposed to go, was leave the fire department. I'm very analytical, and I like to look at all the numbers and the data, and I was like, "Well, it's just so uncertain." And, and sure, we're gonna make, we have a $1,000,000 potential this year, but gosh, what about next year? What if the housing market crashes? What if I don't know, what if an asteroid hit? I don't know, like, and I have a worrying problem, if you will. So I'm like, Are you sure that, like, this is the right thing to do? Like, 'cause
Yeah,
I
but
don't
this
anyways.
sounds so biblical, Cody. I'm getting the fact that you're a man of faith because you said you prayed on it. This is almost like God calling to Abraham that it's time for
Mhm.
you to leave the tent and have an adventure.
Yes, yes, and I'm like, "Are you?" I was like, I don't," I was like, let me just make sure we're getting all the facts straight here. You want me to leave the best job I've ever had in my life. I sat for that position. There was 2,000 people there. There was 2,000 people, and they were hiring 6 or maybe 10 at the time. Anyway, but regardless whether hiring 6 or 10, there was 2,000 people there that showed up for that test that day to become a firefighter paramedic for the city of Denton, and I was like, "This is like it's so like you have better chance to get struck by lightning than you do getting hired." You know, does that make sense? And I was like, "So you want me to leave the best job I ever had, best paying job, good benefits to do this wild adventure?" He's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Okay." I was like, "If that's we sure?" Like, I don't know if you understand, but it was really hard to get that job. So,
It's a
you know.
calling, man. You're being called. You
Yeah.
can't ignore the call. So let me ask you this: from your experience then as a paramedic and a firefighter, has any of that carried over into what you're doing with building?
Yeah, so in a really odd way, I didn't realize how similar running a business and running a fire department are. I was never a fire chief or anything exciting like that, but there's definitely a similarity there. So you can think of, like, my position, like, I'm the fire chief, right? Like, I'm at the top of the but the fire chief isn't, like, running the engine. He's not fighting the fires. He's not picking up people at 2 a.m. So, like, as our company grew, I had to learn to, like, remove myself out of those positions and start to, like, hire and delegate different positions. So we right before I left, we'd hired a company, a real famous battalion chief out of Cincinnati, and he taught this course on calm the chaos, and it was basically a really detailed org chart. You know what I mean? Like, this guy goes here, this guy does this. You know what I mean? Like, engine one pulls up, they take a line to the front door. Engine two grabs water supply. Truck three goes to the roof. So they had all these different positions. Does that make sense? Like, with on a fire
Yep,
ground,
yep.
right? And so when I started building my business, I had to think about my business like a fire ground, right? So I'm like, okay, project manager one goes to, these three houses. Okay, this goes to accounting. This goes to marketing. Because before it was Cody doing marketing, accounting, project management, customer relations, warranty. So I had all those things in my box, if you will. It was just dawned on me one night. I was like, oh, I can take what I learned from the fire department, like how to take chaos and organize it. Does that makes
Yeah,
sense?
absolutely. So you're taming the beast and you're thinking very
Yes.
analytically as opposed to being overwhelmed by all the things. And you're also smart enough at an early age in your evolution to realize, hey, this
Yeah.
isn't all about me. If I don't learn to delegate, and I think we talked about this way earlier, Michael Gerber's book, The E Myth, you
Yes.
basically discovered that you need to take yourself away from the business so you can work on it rather than be stuck in it.
Yes. Now I have the distinct privilege of working on the business and not in the business. We have an estimating department. We have a purchasing department. We have an interior design department. We have a project management department. We have a department that handles accounts payable, accounts receivable. So all those things, and people a lot of times when they interview a builder, they look at me like they're like, "Oh, you're gonna like I'm gonna wear a tool belt," and I was like, "I absolutely used to wear a tool belt, and I'm a pretty good carpenter. I'm a pretty good at a lot of things, but it's not super effective, and it's not super scalable either."
And that's the key, scalable. You again, you're wise enough early. Well, I keep saying early. From the time you left the fire department, you did your first build. How long along the timeline in years did it take before you actually realized I'm doing this full time?
So I did both jobs for about 5 years. I was a builder and a fireman for about 5 years. It was about that time that we really started to ramp up and really started to grow on purpose, grow with a purpose. Does that make sense? Instead of growing by accident.
It wasn't by happenstance because so you could argue that the first build that you did was a fluke.
Yeah, yeah,
Somebody
yeah,
approached you and
yes,
said,
yeah,
"Hey, let's get her done." The second one, not so much of a fluke because somebody knew somebody that knew that you did a home
yeah,
and was willing to
yeah.
give you a shot at it. So I guess the question I'm asking, and not knowing a lot about Texas legislation, at what point do you become a licensed builder? What do you have to do to be able to obtain that?
So in Texas, there are no licensures for builders. So I don't have to hold any license. I wish we did. So from my understanding, maybe in 2008, they brought it in for 1 year and then they took it away. So really, I mean, honestly, anybody could be a builder in the state of Texas, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, because there's no not regulation. What am I looking for? There isn't a standard of excellence, if you will. So
Right.
I could be the guy with the ice cream stand one day, and now I'm building $1 million home, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You could be a fireman one day. And next thing you know, you're
I guess
building a house.
the one that would really kind of establish the credibility would be when you approach a bank to get financing on a build, how
Okay.
they
So
look at you. So let's put
that's,
that in that kind of context. The first
yeah.
time was no go. That's why you had to work with somebody. What
Yeah.
happened the next time around? When was it when the banks finally realized, yeah, that you're a force to be reckoned with?
Yeah. So that's actually a really great question. And since we don't have regulation, a lot of the banks have kind of put in, their own pseudo government, if you will. So we found a bank, and actually the guy that signed off for me, it was his cousin, like Rand was the bank president. You know what I mean? So like the great good old boy story, you're like, yeah, my cousin. And so that was City National Bank, and so we actually financed several builds through them because I'd done one, and I'd got to know Dusty at the time. She was a loan officer, and then I'd called on the second one. I called her, I was like, hey, we're gonna do another build. She's like, oh, okay, sounds great. That was actually a real problem that I had when I first started because they would say, how many builds have you done? And I'd say one. And they said, oh, thank you. And then, how many builds have you done? Done two? No, thank you. Done three? No, thank you. And a lot of people want you to do, a lot of banks want you to do 10 or more per year. For several years, I had a heck of a time getting going, what I mean? Because it was either you had to have cash or we had to go through a bank, and people are like, well, why does this guy have to go through one certain bank? You know what I mean? I would be real honest with them. I was like, hey, listen, I can build it for, less than, everybody else. And I'm not trying to undercut anybody, but I'm just trying to make a little side money. And this is before, it was like what I call building on purpose.
Building with a purpose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Building
Building
with
with
a
a
purpose.
purpose.
So obviously you've hit that magic number of 10 and you've exceeded that already.
Yeah,
So are
yeah.
banks now sending you calendars and calling you up and saying,
Oh,
hey, we got money in the
yeah.
trunk. Cody, come on
Yeah,
down.
we get steaks, and then we get steaks at Christmas time and cards, and people are calling saying, "Mr. Clark, we'd like to take you out to lunch." I'm like, "Well, that's funny because you wouldn't answer the phone a couple years ago." You know, you know what I mean? So it's funny you said it because it's actually never dawned on me. I haven't thought about it in a very long time, but I think that's why you don't see a tremendous amount of builders pop up. I mean, recently I met with a loan officer, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we've got all these builders, coming in. They're undercutting you." I said, "Oh, well, that's great." I said, "Because they're obviously serving a need in the market." I said, "But we are serving a different need. We serve a little higher end clientele. We're not a volume-based builder, we're a quality-based builder." So, I don't know, actually, I haven't thought about that in a long time about banks being kind of the regulatory, mechanism, but they really are.
It's like a necessary evil, I guess, some of them. It depends. Have you ever been in a situation where you've been approved for the fund, you start building, and we know now all across the US, the Fed is pulling back and they're telling banks that some of them are overextended in their build portfolios. So they make the commitment, you start digging the hole, you've got bills to pay, and they say, hey,
Yeah.
Cody, sorry, but we can't follow through. Has that ever darkened your path?
No, no, thank goodness. No, we haven't ran into that. That'd be terrible. I mean, I would assume they were probably protected by the FDIC, insurance. No?
No, no, man. You're basically on a boat by yourself with no paddle. So
Oh, wow.
this is probably a good segue. Sound Capital, which is the company that keeps the light on for the podcast. You said 10. That's their magic number as well, because what they're looking for is minimum 10 on title that you've done, credit score of 680, and you've never had a criminal record. That's basically
Mhm.
the criteria. After that, sky's the limit. And after you've been approved once, then, I make light of this. You call up for funding and they'll say, hey, Cody, it's in the phone booth in a bag.
Yeah,
Yeah, go pick it up. Because you've already been approved. And
yeah.
even if you don't want to build, it's like a credit card. You can apply, have the approval done, and just let
Mhm.
it sit there. Right. So that's pretty cool. But the important thing, especially when it comes to this part about the financing, it's put in escrow. So the last thing you have to worry about before you go to bed at night is will the money be there in the morning when I need that next advance?
Well, that makes me feel better because I actually have ran into this on a cash build. where they literally ran out of money halfway through. And they it sounds crazy, but they tried to they were like, "It's your fault. We ran out of money." And I was like, "Ah, man, no, it's not my
Hold on,
fault
this
though.
is the bank or this is the client telling you
This is
you
the
ran out?
client." The
Okay.
client was financing their own bill, and they said, "Well," because they always ask her like, "How much money do you think it's gonna take to dry it in?" And I said, "I think it's gonna take about $250,000 or whatever," and they're like, "Okay, great." When it cost 270, I didn't know they were I I said about 250, you know what I mean? About a quarter million, if it's 30,000. Yeah, because when we're talking about, I mean, it's just a general question, and I had no idea that they didn't have the funds because they had to sell another property, and they're like, "Oh, we'll have that property sold, we just won't tell them about it." And so I sent them a bill for 30 grand, for a roof, and they're like, "So we're gonna have to, we can't pay you on this." And I'm like, "Excuse me?" So I feel like I've ran into a bunch of odd scenarios, throughout the years.
You're paying for your education the hard way.
Yeah,
That's a school of hard knocks. So the logical question I'm gonna ask you is, Cody, what did we learn from this?
yeah, yeah, don't build for people that don't have proof of funds. So
Yeah.
we started making people have proof of funds. Yeah, Alex Ramosi calls it ignorance capital. He's like, "You have to pay down your ignorance capital." I
And
said,
there's interest on that big time, man.
"No
Big
joke.
interest on that. Yeah.
I've paid a lot of ignorance capital."
You're not alone. A lot of spec builder not spec, sorry, custom will fall into that same trap. They look in the bank account because the client has advanced whatever, and it's sitting there, and they treat it like it's their money,
Oh
and
my
they forget that that money is allocated for that bill, and they have to manage it. And so, again, one, more lesson for you that you've learned along the way of time management, money management, and everything else, and the fact that you're delegating. So that will never come around to bite you in the ass, I would say it's safe to say.
Yeah, yeah, we're actually dealing with this right now. We just picked up a house a client gave fronted 100 and we'll say $175,000, I don't know, plus or minus how much ever it was. Fronted it to a builder to buy material. The builder spent it. Like, he just spent it and then went out of business. I was like, "Holy smokes." I was like, "That's crazy." And now they're asking me to come and pick up the pieces, and I said, "Oh, I don't need the work, and I dang sure don't need the headache." Because they're always like, "Hey, can you take 175,000 off my bill? I've already spent it." I said, "You didn't spend it with me." So I'm sorry. I'd love to help you, but I mean, that's a lot of money. And no, I can't take $175,000 off the bill. And they're like, "Well, what do I do?" And I said, "I don't know what to tell you. The bank is the one that's at fault here. The bank mismanaged the funds. Your mismanagement, like we used to our in the fire department, we used to say, your emergency does not constitute an emergency on my part. So just because they're having an emergency doesn't mean we drive crazy to get there, doesn't mean we act stupid when we get there. It means that there's an emergency going on. We look at it cool, calm, and collected. We evaluate, we make a decision, and we act on that decision. So when I was thinking, I was like, they have an emergency going on. It's not my emergency, and not being condescending or ugly about it. But I was like, we have to look at it very logical and not emotional.
Well, I think you're
Uh,
probably torn by it because you wanna be the good guy, you wanna help. I think that's
yes,
your Christian ethic, but at the same time, you don't wanna be put on a cross as a result of it.
right. We're both gonna be out to dry before too long.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're doing both custom and spec right now or mostly custom?
So we're only doing custom homes right now. Our goal for 2026 is to do some specs. I expect so we're watching prices go down. We're watching land values go down. I have never seen anything go down in the history of ever. I don't know if it's just a little dip in the market or what's going on. So I was like, well, let's just wait, because we're going to buy now and then build maybe in the spring. I just actually met with one of our trade partners, one of our roofers. He was like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "Man, we just bought 12 lots." They're doing very well for themselves, and they had some money that they needed to get rid of, before the new tax year, and he's like, "Yeah, we just bought 12 lots," and he's like, "What do you think?" I said, "I think you should have waited." He's like, "Really? You think so?" I said, "Yeah, I think so. If you're, asking my honest opinion, I think you probably overpaid for them." I
Wow.
said, "'Cause I'm watching things trend downwards right now, but we'll see."
So if you go down that route, will it be high end that you do, or what's the price point that you're thinking about?
Yeah, yeah, so that's a really great question. That's one that we work on as a team a lot that I think about. I'm like, "Is it a really high-end build? Is that where we" I think that's the direction we're gonna go. It's probably like a $2 million spec, and the reason is because when interest rates are really high, the rich are getting even richer. Does that make sense? And if you have $2 million, you don't care if it's a 20% interest rate. You're excited because you're making money on your money. Your money's making interest. You know what I mean? It seems to be the people that are like in that kind of, I would say, like normal space, like the majority, like the middle America. They're the ones that are going to be most affected, by interest rates and by housing prices. So we would rather just build in that really high end market.
Yeah, I think there's a certain truth to that. People that are in that money bracket of, they've got 200 or 2 million sitting in, cushions under the couch. They have
Yes.
an appreciation for money and they know how to leverage it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
And
for
so
sure.
when they see that there's opportunity, that's when they pounce because that's how they've made the money in the first place. It wasn't just given to them, maybe in some cases, but they
Yeah.
understand the power of money and how to use it. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm intrigued by the fact that you learned early to delegate. Now, is this something that you instinctively did, or did you start doing coaching of any kind? What got you to that point in your career where you realized it's not about you?
Yes, that's a great question. So there's been a couple key people that we've hired in the company, and this last, I would say, I had a girl that worked for me, and she kind of brought me into what I call the digital age, like started using email. Like, I mean, I'm talking about like we started like I was like, just a good pen and a strong notebook paper, and I ran the whole business on pen notebook paper, and then I'd hired this girl, and she's like, what do we do? You don't have a company email?" I said, "No, it's just I'm a personal email." So like, I'm talking about like she's like, "Okay, let's set up an email. We'll start using some other technologies," and that was great. And she kind of brought us to a certain point, and then we actually ended up hiring another lady. Her name's Beth, and she's actually my general manager. And when Beth came on, she had worked for another custom home builder that actually sold their business. And they'd hired a company called EOS. That stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so she said, "Hey, I want to bring this thing in called EOS." I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever. I don't know what that is." You know what I mean? But and it basically it laid out the framework for how our company is structured and how to delegate. And you can pay EOS, and it's a franchise, and they'll come in, and it doesn't matter what your business is, what it does, they can provide some structure to it, and it's a great tool. But she brought EOS in, and then as we started laying out the framework, I mean, I started, drawing parallels, like I said before, from the fire department to EOS, and I wish I could take credit for it. I wish I could tell you that I was super smart and that I just dreamed up this massive org chart, and I was so great at delegation, and, I just won the war, I'm just the greatest general, what I mean? But it's like, but no, I had somebody that like brought me a blueprint, like a builder's blueprint, if you will. They're like, if you want to be successful, you'll like follow this blueprint. So that's what EOS did for us.
But you did. So way back when, prior to COVID, I was teaching realtors how to do video marketing. So using their cell phone and getting them over the fear, "Oh, I'm too fat, I'm too ugly," anything with a two out front of it. Right. So
Yeah.
that my superpower was getting them to be able to laugh at themselves and actually hit that button. And I'd be traveling all over North America teaching this. And I was reading a post or it was something on Facebook, whatever. And it was another guy, similar to me that was doing video. And he shared a tip or something. I thought, wow, that's a really neat tip. But I want to give credit where credit's due. So I
Hmm.
reached out to the guy and I said, "Hey, would you mind if I, Cody, if I shared this little ditty that you put up there?" And he goes, "No, you can't. That's one of my secrets." And I go, "What?" "No, that's one of my secrets." And it's like somebody hit me in the head with a fish. That's what it felt like. My wife does gift baskets. And so coming up to Christmas, she'll head into the city, and that's where she goes to her different suppliers to get stuff. And I don't know if you remember the Indiana Jones movie where they find the Covenant. Yeah, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And at the very end, remember they've got it in a box, and it's this warehouse that goes on for infinity. I'm in a
Yes.
warehouse like that with my wife, and everywhere you look, it's boxes. And it just hit me. I get the camera and I start this little video like you're doing now. We're going to talk about that too. So I do a quick video, and Michael Creasy here, and I want to share with you your success to real estate is in one of these boxes because all the secrets that you could ever hope to master are in these boxes. But here's my promise: I could give you that box, and 99.9% of you will never open it. So there is no such thing as a secret, my friend. They're there. Aristotle said there's nothing new under the sun, right? It's maybe manipulated a bit, it's shinier to look newer, but everything's there. but most people will never take the time to actually engage and execute. And you did. You signed up for EOS. And
Mhm.
yeah, you said you're looking at the blueprints. There it is. But I'll argue that probably 50% of builders that sign up don't actually press the button and execute.
That is really, 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 really interesting. He's actually a client now. He's actually a client. We're about to finish up one of his builds. He sold his business for millions and millions and millions and enough millions where they never, ever, ever his kids and grandkids never have to work again. So he did pretty well for himself. And I was talking to him, and he actually sent me a podcast, and he goes, "This is the CEO of Milestone. They do HVAC, plumbing, heating, air, electrical. They're a home services company." And it's the CEO on there. I can't remember his name right now, but anyway, doesn't matter. But he's over there like just spilling out industry secrets. And I called David and I go, "Holy smokes, man." I said, "This guy's," I said, "I'm like doing the math." He's talking, I said, "This guy's making $30 million a year after he pays everybody." You know what I mean? He's making a fortune. And then he's out there just telling everybody about his secrets. And David goes, "Ah, those secrets are safe. Everybody's too lazy to execute on them."
There
And
you go. Welcome.
I go, "What?" I go, "Are you serious?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, we talked to like 10 other builders before we talked to you." And I'd ask him what kind of systems, processes, communication, all the things that I could read the book, you can watch on YouTube. Like, here's the 5 things you look for. He's like, "You're the only one that doing those." He said, "So that told me that you read books, that you educate yourself, and you've got some kind of system in place." And he's like, "I'm not looking for some like two trucks in a truck." Says, "Well, my granddad built houses." And he goes, "You didn't have a long lineage of building houses, but it didn't matter to me because you built the machine." But anyway, back to my point was, or back to your point, yeah, the information is out there. That's what's crazy to me. I actually did a video yesterday and I said, "Hey, I just read this book and it blew my mind." And it's called the Magnet, the Method. It's not super sexy on the cover or anything. You wouldn't just like inherently pick it up. But I read it and I go, "Holy smokes, this thing is," I think we have a sharp spear, but that thing really, put the razor edge on the spear, and I thought, "I can't tell anybody about this." But then I thought, "These idiots will never read it." I said, "What the heck?" So anyway, that's
You could put that book on every contractor's seat. The same thing. Like 80% of them will just move it away for room for their lunchbox, right? That's the way it is. You said video, and that intrigued me because one of the things that I saw you doing on Facebook was these kind of impromptu, low budget, no budget, definitely not Hollywood style videos. How did you start implementing that in your business? And what was the thought behind actually doing that?
yeah, great question. We have a company that, like, comes out and sets up the lights and the camera, the action, the little clap thing and all that crap, and they're real polished, and their videos are edited and cut and, all that. They're fixing my mustache and putting makeup on me, and they just look super unnatural to me. But I was watching this guy, he builds smokers. I know this is really crazy, but he builds smokers and he's like, has his phone like propped up on his little table. And he's like, "This is how you build a smoker." And I was drawn to the authenticity of his video. And I thought, you know what? I'm sitting on my port. I have something to say, and I think people would get a kick out of it. So I just hit record on my phone and I just started recording the video, and they do pretty well. And I'm not trying to go viral. I mean, but if I think I have something that somebody may be interested in, I thought, well, what better way to disseminate the information than to put it in video format? And I said, maybe a customer will see it, maybe they won't. Maybe a builder will see it, maybe it'll help them out. Maybe in some other industry. I had a couple of other builders reach out to me and go, "Man, that video deal was awesome." And I said, you mean the one that was uncut, unedited, the dogs barking and the wind blowing? Yeah, that one?" They're like, "Yeah, that one." "Did you like the other ones?" They're like, "Oh, they're fine." You know what I mean? But they're just, everybody seems to appreciate the raw video.
There's a authenticity, and again, this is something that I was teaching. The more perfect you make it, because life is not perfect by any means, right? You
Right.
set such a high expectation that when the person actually meets what they believe to be the real thing, it's a disappointment every time because you're never
Yes.
going to be that, coiffed and whatever. And that was something I used to tease real estate agents with all the time. I'd have, maybe 300 in a room and I'm training and I'd say, okay, who here has a business card with their picture on it? Which they all do from birth, right? So I'd randomly grab one and I look at it and I said, okay, this is all in fun. Don't take it too serious. But man, you look great when you were in high school. And which gets a chuckle, right? Because most of them They'll
That's the
take a picture
truth.
and they Photoshop it and they do everything, right? So the expectation now is all their marketing collateral has that same picture on it. And they're
Yes.
bombarding a neighborhood, like you're getting at your place. Oh, well, here's a calendar. Here's this, that. And when the moment
Yeah.
finally arrives that you get that itch, I'm going to call Michael and have him come out and list my home. Knock on the door. Michael shows up and you're looking at the business card and you're looking at me, you're looking at the card, and you're thinking you're going to call 911 to report a
Yes.
missing realtor because this isn't the
Yes.
guy. And so,
Yeah.
right off the bat, the holy trifecta in marketing and in business is we want to work with people that we know, like, and trust. That's the
Absolutely.
trifecta: know, like, and trust. What have you done to the trust factor when they can't connect to you the moment they meet you?
I know. That's super interesting.
So I don't want to make it sound like we're bashing realtors here, Cody, because I are one and I have been since 1989, right? But I know not all of them, how do I say politely, can cut paper with scissors. Okay, let's leave it at that, or should even have scissors in their hand. From your perspective now as a builder,
Uh-huh.
is that a necessary evil? So, how are you actually doing the sales end of your home? Are you relying on realtors? Do you have your own internal sales team? How are you doing that?
So I am the sales team, or I mean, I do most of the sales. I have a sales team. I have a sales team. They mostly set up appointments and, like they're like doing all the pre-qualifying and stuff like that before I ever get on the phone before they ever meet me. I'm just really trying to focus on just the really high end sales and then kind of let my sales team handle like, well, I don't say less important, you know what I mean? But like the bills that aren't as high stake. But if it's got, indoor pickleball court and a golf simulator and, a urinal in the master bedroom, that's no joke, a real house has a urinal. And I was like, that guy's a genius. I was like, I needed that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm probably going to go meet with those people because that's probably a $10 million build. You know what I mean? But if it's a $500,000 build, I'm not going to do it.
You've just lit up a separate thing here. Are you going to the International Build Show in Florida in February?
We were actually talking about that going to
Okay.
the, yeah, IBC. I would like to.
Yeah, I'm asking because they've got something called, so it's the 2026 American Home, right? So
Okay.
every year they showcase a home where they bring in everything they can possibly think of, cutting edge technology, materials. So here are two things I want you to try to think of at the same time: Florida and underground parking. Which one of those things don't belong together? Okay.
Wow, both maybe? I was like, are Florida with underground parking? I was like, that sounds like that's a
It gets
swamp.
better. So this home, I can't remember the square footage, but I'm guessing it's around 10,000 square feet. It's a monster, right? And the parking is underground and it's about 14 feet underground. 14 feet Florida underground. That's where you're parking your cars. That's the garage. So you literally drive down into the abyss. But how do you turn your car around? Well, simple. You remember Batman, the series, the old series?
No, it has
So
oil.
you land on the disc, this sucker turns around, right? 180. But that's not good enough because if you can own a $10,000 home, obviously you've got more than a Honda Civic that you've got to park. They
Yeah,
actually have the racks, and I think they're three, a set of three or a set of four. So spin, insert car onto rack. This is just one of the features of this home that's going to be on display.
that's cool. That's awesome.
That got
I
me
so
sucked.
yeah, maybe
Yeah,
I'll make a point to make it out to Florida. I'm just making myself a note. IBC.
yeah, I'll buy you a beer. We'll get to meet in person. That'd be kind of
Yeah,
fun.
that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So I guess that asking you that question about real estate or agents, now that I think about it, isn't really fair because you're doing custom. So your paths aren't going to cross until you start getting into the spec side. And then you'll have to decide what you're going to do with a sales team. So let me use that as a jumping board. The idea of generating sales, what are you doing for leads right now? Are you relying on AI, internet, print? Like what would be the main driver that is getting people to ring you up and knock on your door?
We're exploring a couple different things. We partnered with SendGym to like send out direct mailers. But like let's say you send out 500 mailers. I mean, there's like a 0.3% response rate. You don't get as much mail as you did before. I kind of took the direct mail idea from some other industries. First of all, it's expensive. So, I mean, I was like, well, I don't want to spend $500 a month on direct mail whenever, the conversion rate is very, 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 very low. So right now we're mostly focused on social media. That's actually one of the things that we're tackling right now. That's one of the hot button issues for the fourth quarter of 2025 is like, what's the marketing plan? Like, what are we doing? So we've got organic social media. We've also got, paid ads running as well. We have some ads that are like AI driven. It's like a walkthrough of a house, but it's clearly AI, and they do okay. What really does the best, honestly? So the trust level right now is really, really low, and with people. So you asked me about sitting on the porch, and I thought, well, if you really want to get to know who Cody is, Cody's sitting on his porch at his house videoing a non-edited video.
No, no,
And
no,
so
time out, time out. No, 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 no. It's gotta be Cody sitting on the front porch of a home that he built, having a
yes,
beer with the people he built the home for.
so
That's
that
your video.
really, you think so? Okay. I love that idea. So I would love to do we're actually thinking about starting a podcast, and I don't know if podcast is even the right word. It's just me having a conversation with, like, maybe let's say just like somebody that wants to build a house, somebody that we built the house for, like, hey, how was the home building process and like it's just non-scripted. You can say whatever you want. I mean, you can say, "Oh, it sucked," and maybe we won't post that one, but you know what I mean. But we're trying to get more authenticity.
Yeah, well,
I'm
think
after
about what we
authenticity.
talked about earlier, where we talked about know, like, and trust, that trifecta, right?
Uh-huh.
Who better to represent your brand than somebody that you've already done business with, that likes you, that is giving you money, and is gonna have nice things to say about you?
Yeah, yeah.
That's the kind of video that I'd love to see, not like a full length motion picture, an hour, but little snippets. And the first one is, when you were looking for a builder, what were some of the things that you were concerned about? What were some of the things that kept you up at night about the process of, picking a builder? And once you did pick a builder, that's the easy part. Now you've got somebody. But what were your concerns moving through the process? And then more
Okay.
importantly, how did we solve that dilemma? So, the classic formula is you find a problem, you agitate that problem, so you make it bigger and you make them squirm a little bit, and then you give them the solution. Well, in this
Mhm.
case, you were the solution.
Mhm.
So I would get them to rework or rethink, if you will, that process of what it took to lead up to you. Of all the needles in the haystack, they found yours. And then
Yes.
what was it that Cody delivered that actually made them feel at ease with the process? That's gold, my friend, because
Yeah.
go back to know, like, and trust. We want to work with people we know, like, and trust. But the consumer, when we buy something, like, think, when was the last time you bought something gnarly and big?
Yeah, probably like a truck, for example.
Okay, so before you bought that truck, did you just go to the dealership and say, yeah, I'll take two in red? Or did you do any research online first?
Yeah, 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 it's a very research intensive, process.
And you
That
weren't
that's
looking necessarily what the dealer had to say. You wanted to see what other people that bought the truck had to say about it.
Yes, yes, I'm a big I like to research, I like to watch YouTube videos and just, like, understand what people that's the biggest seller, that's the I guess, let people sell for you.
Yeah. So you have that conversation, but the other part is show me what Cody does that makes Cody different from all the other
Mhm.
developers. Like, what is it?
Okay.
So there's it's almost folklore now, but once upon a time, apparently, and this is the story, Budweiser hired a copywriter to come in, and they wanted to come up with a brand new ad campaign. So this would have been, like the 50s or 60s. So the guy comes in, they give him the tour, and he's amazed. Like the big brass kettles. Oh my gosh, he's, feverishly writing down notes. The water, what's the spring water? Oh my God, he's writing this down. He says, how come you haven't told anybody? He's, well, because we all do the same thing. Well, it's not a matter that everybody does the same thing. It's the consumer doesn't know what it is that you do.
Yeah, yeah, that makes okay.
So instead of Cody, and I'm not knocking your videos at all. Don't get me wrong here about you sitting on a porch eating a cheeseburger and, letting some wind pass. But take me onto a build site and show me some of the things that you're doing that are really novel about how you build.
Okay,
And that could be a minute or 2 minutes, not long at all, but just, here's what some builders do, but here's what makes us different,
okay.
right? And there's a formula to that. The problem with most builders is they do X. What makes us different is why. And the benefit to you is three-part formula.
I like
Wash,
it.
rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. And just keep churning out those videos. And you could do that in, Saturday afternoon. You go up there and you shoot 4, 5, 10, whatever they are, and you just let them rip once a week or twice a week, however it is. But
Yeah.
in the course of an afternoon, you've shot basically your whole month's worth of content.
Yes.
I'll give you another one since I'm on a roll here. This way you'll think I'm smarter than I really am. It's more than just the looks, Cody. There's It's called the Ben Franklin approach. And you get a sheet of paper, divide it in half. And you have to pretend that you're the buyer, or in your case, the client that's coming to work with you. And you know that there are 10 common questions that they're going to ask you. Write
Mhm.
down those 10 questions. But here's where it gets interesting. You, as the professional builder that has done this now for a living, right? You've scraped your knees, you've banged your thumbs, like you know what it is to build homes. What are the 10 questions they should be asking you, but they don't know what they don't know? Now, is that about, I don't know, like sealing the home? Is it about insulation? Is it about financing? But what are those 10 things that they would be desperate to know the answer to, but the problem is I don't want to say dumb, they just don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And now you've got 20 videos there, man, to shoot in a weekend. There's your content for the next month or 2 months.
I like that. I like that a lot. Do you have videos? You said something interesting. You're talking about you're working with realtors and, trying to get you went over the country, like, teaching them, like, how to I'm too fat, I'm too whatever, I'm too that's a common thing that I see with builders. Are like, "Oh, nobody's gonna watch my videos," or I just wanna put pretty pictures up, or whatever,
Nah,
our work speaks for itself, my favorite one.
that's
My work
bullshit.
speaks
Come on.
I
Yeah,
I was like
yeah,
I was like, everybody's work looks like I don't know. You wouldn't be in business if you didn't have, like, decent looking work, so that's a given, right?
yeah,
That's the eye candy, I mean, everybody has eye candy. Everybody can Photoshop a build, I mean, anybody can Photoshop some trash out of the way or whatever, you know what I mean? That's the eye candy. That's step 1. So everybody kinda has that covered, you know what I mean? But yeah, I like that. What do they need to know about hiring, a home builder? So that's a great I'm gonna have to shoot some content on that.
yeah. Captivating title: The 10 Worst Mistake Home Buyers Make When Selecting a Builder.
Mhm.
Ta-da! There, it writes itself. There you go. My job here is done. I can ride off into the sunset, my friend.
Job here is done. That's awesome. I love stuff like that because I struggle to come up with content because I really do wanna be informative. I really do wanna help people, like I wanna sell houses. I would be lying if I told you I didn't wanna sell houses.
Yeah. But
But
you'll
I
do
also
that
want
through I don't want to say the back door, but if they know, like, and trust you, it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, yeah, we wanna sell houses, but we want to understand make people understand, like, what we've been through, done, how we do it, why we're different, and have that be, legitimate,
Yeah.
obviously.
They say you should never ask a question unless you know the answer. That's what lawyers say. Never ask the question unless you know what the answer is going to be. But I'm going to step out on a limb here. The videos that you're doing now, do you ever get a reaction when you're in town, you're shopping, you're doing something, and do people recognize you from what you've been doing?
I so that's never happened to me personally, but I actually got a call the other day. It was one of my salespeople that was talking to a realtor, like, "Oh, yeah, we know who Cody Clark is." I said, "Do they really?" I said, I never I said, "I mean, I know that lady I know that realtor's name. Never met her, but she was talking about me like she knew who I was because she's like, "I watch his videos all the time." And I go, "Oh, that's amazing." I was like, "It works." I was like, "Something's working."
I'm going to step off my soapbox. So it's called parasocial behavior. When people see you, when they see you on the screen, they don't know that it's a computer screen. As far as they're concerned, they're watching TV. And we've been conditioned up until lately, but what we see on TV must be true.
Yes.
And the fact that you're on the screen gives you this halo of being an authority. And you're basically like a movie star. Like you're above everybody else because they see you on TV.
Mm.
And the power of
Yeah.
that is when they do meet you because they've been watching your videos. This is called parasocial behavior. They actually feel like they know you because they've experienced you from seeing you on camera. So they will approach you and say, "Hey, Cody, how's it going?" And if your videos aren't Hollywood perfect and you're willing to pull back the persona and let them see who you really are, that's a completely different level of trust altogether. So I'm stepping off my soapbox now. Take it and run with it, young man.
No, that's interesting. We hired a business coach. You're asking like, what have we done? And it was EOS, and then this next step was to hire a business coach, somebody that had basically purchased all the ignorance capital. So I was basically purchasing it from him. But my point is that I've been watching his videos. Right? It was like it was parasocial behavior. I was like, I know this guy. Like I know who he is, and I was so excited to talk to him. I'm like, holy smokes, it's him. Like it's really him. Like it's and I was like, I felt like I knew him because I've been watching him, so often on camera. I don't know how this fits into this conversation, but he did say something really interesting in his videos. He said he always starts out with custom home builders. Because it caught my attention, right? Because he's talking to me. I'm a custom home builder. He's like, "Do you feel like you're running an adult daycare?" That's me. "Do you feel like every day is just one big chaotic storm?" That's me. "Do you feel," like, and he's going through these pain points, right? I thought that was so interesting because he starts out by, identifying his audience and, then talking about the pain points. He's like, "Do you want to figure out what, $100 million builders know, quietly and secretly?" And I said, "Yes, I do." Yes, I do. I would
This
love
guy's
to
hitting
know.
it on. So
Yeah.
there's a subtle difference. Well, no, actually, it's a dramatic difference between advertising and marketing. Advertising is probably something that you're doing right now with the AI, that you're putting your brand out there, you're hoping people will recognize it and they're going to make the call. Whereas marketing is the actual science of how do I get a message that's going to get inside their head, and more importantly, that they're going to take action on. So, perfect example, you go to a ball game and on the loudspeaker, "Hey, somebody left their lights on in their truck." Yeah, well, there's only what, 20,000 trucks out there, you don't care. But, "Hey, there's a black Denali that looks like a 2020 on fire." Yeah, black on, well, it's turning several shades of black, but it's on fire right now. You can bet that every single person that owns a black Denali is now interested and running out
Yes.
there to see, because that message is catered directly to them.
Yeah,
That's the art of marketing.
yeah, he gave me a real similar, analogy. He goes, if you're in a store and somebody says, "Hey," he's like, "You might get a couple people to turn around." He goes, somebody says, "Hey, dad." He goes, "You're gonna get a few, like, that's only the dads are gonna turn around, right?" But if somebody says, "Hey, Cody," you're gonna turn and go, so it's like, but he's it's just exact. I love the analogy because this is the second time I've heard the same analogy in a couple days, but, I'd never heard it before, and I thought, "That's genius."
The
I was like,
voices
"We."
are whispering in your head today, Cody.
Yes,
So
sounds
here's
like
the question. What are we going to do about all this knowledge that's been laid at your feet?
now it's important to execute on it, right? And so now what I'm trying to do is like trying to pare down my advertising, my marketing. I don't remember which one is which at this point, but I'm trying to figure out. So maybe it's a video of me saying like, "Hey, homeowners," or "Hey, landowners, do you own a piece of land that you're wanting to build a custom home on?" Rather than just broadcasting out to anybody and everybody.
Or take
So I
this one
think,
step further. So, landowners, are you holding on to land that's sitting there doing nothing? How would you like to partner and make some money out of it? So now they come to you and you've got to assess the land if it's worth building on. You don't have the risk of having to put money into the land because they'll partner with you and that's their equity share. So now when
yes,
you go to finance that, your loan to value is going to be that much better because you didn't have to pay for the land. And there's actually value assigned to that when you're going for the loan.
right. I love it. I love it.
See would have happened if you returned my call sooner, Cody? Well,
Yeah, I'd have been way further down the road,
man,
but I
uh,
feel like the timing was perfect because I feel like we're so much further ahead even now than when we first spoke.
well, I think you were just revving up your engines. And now you're actually, well, let's use the runway analogy. You were taxing. Now you actually got wind under your wings and you're taking off.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
kudos to you, man.
I've actually bought back some of my time now.
That's the
Um,
important thing. Yeah.
yeah, I read Dan Martell's book called "Buy Back Your Time." I've read a bunch of books. Obviously, that's a common theme here is I read a lot, and I read a lot of books, But it's interesting, like the E-Myth Revisited, 5 IQ Time, the Lead the Magnet Method, there's a lot of these books that are, like, really instrumental in my growth, and I can, like, point to, like, times on a if you were to look at it, like, on a linear chart, you can say, "Oh, that's," and you can start to see, definitive difference. So I'm always excited to see what the future holds, and if you have any good book recommendations,
Oh, I'll keep you busy with that one. You mentioned growth. Again, this is just the way I think you're. Who were the people in your life that influenced you once you made that decision to get into this? And I've noticed you use the word "we" a lot. So that's referring to your wife, I take it, that's been on this journey with you.
no, actually, she's supportive. My wife so I'll give you a really good example, Mike. I'd say, "Hey, Mace, I'm gonna go buy a yacht," and she'd be like, "Oh, that sounds great, whatever you wanna do." Like, I could just be like, "I'm gonna go buy so at 47," and she'd be like, "Sounds great, are we gonna, like, fly it or something?" She doesn't really care, but I do say "we," and when I say "we," I'm really more referring to my wife is supportive, like, she doesn't I don't say she doesn't care, but she's just like, "Yeah, whatever you wanna do," but I have a great I don't wanna say I have, like, I own them, but I don't know how else to say it other than I have a great team behind me. So I rely heavily on my GM. I rely heavily on everybody that works for me. I feel like I can put my full weight on them without them buckling. So when I say "we," I don't know, it would be like what do you call the guy that, like, runs the symphony, like the
Oh,
the
you're the conductor.
the conductor, yes. So, I mean, it would be like the conductor saying, "I played such a beautiful show," and, like, you didn't really play anything, you just conducted it. So it would be or it's like Jerry Jones saying that he won all these football games, or none of the Cowboys suck, but that's a whole nother but it's like the head coach really didn't touch a football, you know what I mean? He just helped bring all the pieces together, so I don't know, when I say "we," I'm really referring to the team that has gotten me here. I have very little to do with it other than I just took some really good advice, and I was just smart enough to listen. I didn't really do anything other than just listen to some good advice and kinda help put the pieces together.
I'm going to push back on you on that one. The definition of mastery is somebody that can make it look so easy that anybody can do it.
Yeah, I mean,
Right? And
yeah,
you're in that position right now. Like if you've watched, I don't watch a lot of sports, but who's the big basketball guy? Jordan. He just flies down the court. Well, and then he makes
yeah,
it look effortless, and everybody tries to do the same thing, but they end up on their face. That's the definition of mastery. You're in that zone where you're so in tune with everything around you that it looks easy to everybody that's watching.
that's interesting. I don't know. I really can't say that I take a whole lot of credit for anything other than I'm too
You can't see it here. Whenever somebody pays me a compliment, I always ask, okay, what do they want? Like, what do you want? And my wife had to post a note, and you can't see it here. It says, learn to say thank you.
That's interesting. I
That'll
don't
give
want
you something
anything.
to ponder. You can ponder
Yeah,
that for the rest of the afternoon. I got one
yeah.
more question, man. The wheels are about to touch down. And you being a man of faith, has there ever been, and you don't have to answer this question if you think it's too, but has there ever been a moment where you thought, we just can't do this anymore. I just whatever it is financially, maybe it was at the beginning, you just bit off more than you could chew, backs against the wall. Was there ever that moment where you thought we just can't go? And then there was a voice or a message that said, "Shit, we're going to go through the storm and get it done."
Yeah, I don't know if there was a voice or a message. There was a lot of prayer involved, but yeah, I told my wife I never wanted to quit something so bad in my life. I never wanted to quit the business so much. Like, there was just a time early on where I said, "This thing is eating me alive. Like, it's consuming my life. I have to either get better at it or quit." This it was oh, man, there was some awful, terrible, miserable oh gosh, awful, terrible times. To the point where I felt like I was failing me, I was failing my family, I was failing my customers, I was failing I told my wife, I said, I'm gonna edit this part out.
Yeah, keep going. It's good. It just shows you're a person.
I said, "I'm not a very good God." And what I mean by that is, like, I'm just I was like I was all things to all people. but I was nothing to anyone. I don't know that it makes any sense if I'm but I was trying to be everything to everyone, and I was not doing a very good job of it, and I was failing in all aspects.
What turned it around?
A lot of prayer and petition to the Lord. I would just say it was a lot of prayer. It a really good team turned it around. That's why I'm so hesitant to say like, "Oh, yeah, I'm so good." I really suck. If you really wanna know, like, I'm really not that good at all. I'm just really smart enough to listen when somebody says, "Hey, man, you look like you're drowning over there. You want a life raft?" I'd be like, "I don't like life rafts. I like to drown." You know what I mean? That's what I was doing initially. You know what I mean? But I don't think, at least me, I've gotten a lot better, but, initially, it was like, I can do it. I don't need any help.
I think the fact that you keep referring to your team means you've realized that it's not you. And respectfully, you've
No.
referred to your team that way, not something that you possess. But I'm going to push back a little bit and say, yes, they are your team. You do own them because they've gravitated to you and you're their leader. And they're not going to go anywhere else because you're willing to cut through the bullshit and say, here I am, warts and all.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the definition of leadership, that they will follow you through the fire, not because you coerce them, not because you pay them so much, but there's a vision that you have that they share. And getting back to how we started this at the beginning, you're Abraham, man. You're on an adventure. And in any good adventure, you've got the hero and you've got the cast of his faithful that follow him on that adventure. That's where you are.
Yeah, I don't know what I wish I'd learned. I wish I would've listened sooner, you know?
No mistakes. It's just lessons that you've learned. I'm gonna give you one more, and then I'll let you off the hook. So here's a scenario. And it's not gonna happen for decades, like years and years and years to come. But here's the scenario. You wake up one morning and you're dead, and you're at heaven's gate, and there's St. Peter, and he's got an iPad because we're in the digital age. We got AI, and he says, "Cody, come on over here." And he's whipping through this iPad, and as he's scrolling through, this is your life story. And he looks at one little video unfolding, and he looks at you and he smiles. Then he looks at one and gives you kind of a smirk, like, you've been bad. And as he goes through this, he just suddenly stops and he looks you right in the eye and he says, Cody, not today. Not today. There's something you still have to do. What's that something that you still have to do?
I don't know. That's a great question. I like the question. I just don't know if I have the answer.
So maybe what we do is we pause and we say, to be continued.
Let's do that.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.